Do you know what we're here for?
Equal parts. Oh my gosh.
Illegal.
We live in a nonsense world.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Okay. For the last video. Let's go to this. This is from Hasan Minhaj's YouTube channel from 14 hours ago. That's right, this was earlier on Thursday. I think this came out sometime around noon. And he had on a senator from Vermont by the name of Bernard Sanders. Let's go here and see how this went. Spoiler alert. It did not go as well as I would have liked.
You have been ahead of the curve on so many of these issues for so long. Increasing the minimum wage, free tuition, LGBTQ rights. You have been talking about universal health care since Star Wars A New Hope was in theaters in 1978. Essentially, what you've been doing for the past 40 years is just doing what I do with my kids. Put on your shoes. Hey, just put your shoes on. Stop. Put your shoes on. Put your shoes on. Please, for the love of God, put your shoes on.
The healthcare is a right of all of the people.
That healthcare is a right of all people. Healthcare is a right of all people. Healthcare is a right of all people. Healthcare is a right of all people.
You've been saying put your shoes on for the past 40 years. Senator Sanders, do you ever feel like blowing your brains out?
Occasionally.
Because my daughter is in the first grade. She hasn't even gotten to the first grade. And
Sounds like you feel like blowing your brains out.
Daily, Senator Sanders.
Oh, don't do this. It's not the solution.
Illegal.
Look.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Bernie Sanders. Yeah.
There's almost as many people in the room here as there were last night.
Senator Sanders, do you need a little...
Jane, how's my hair?
Jane?
How's my hair? How's my hair? Well, it's looking good. Oh, that hair's looking real good.
This is true love. This is real love.
All 30 of them.
This is real love. Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I want to start by exposing a secret about you. I know this is going to be a little intense. Senator, how tall are you?
6 feet. Television makes you short and fat. No matter how I sit, I look fatter than I am.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not that fat.
Me too. It's exactly right. The camera adds 20 pounds. I'm much taller and skinnier than I look here on the stream.
You're not
But I
fat.
am 6 feet.
I'm not fat shaming you. But there is this notion that you're a short king, but you are a tall comrade.
Now that we've gotten through the important stuff.
All right.
Let's get to it.
Let's
get to
Let's get to the real stuff.
Yeah.
As someone who has covered the DNC for a long time, I've been there. It's felt electric in a way that I haven't felt in a long time. But I'm also seeing Democratic Party leadership and solidarity like I've never seen before. There's no sneak dissing, there's no disorder, there's no infighting. Progressives and neoliberals arm in arm. Senator Sanders, we had yourself, AOC, and JB Pritzker, a billionaire, all on stage together. So my question to you is, are we witnessing the rise of a more unified Democratic Party, or is this a Donald J. Trump is an existential threat?
By the way, since you're here right now in this wee hour, I'm going to give you some stream lore, some galactic stream lore. You know what the most real thing on stream, aside from the things that we are actually watching, is that you see on stream every day? It's me. This is actually a picture of me, the guy talking, galactic stream lore. I took a selfie of myself wearing a helmet. My helmet, a helmet that I made with my own hands. And this is me. You see me every day. It's real. The realest thing.
Well, it depends. I don't know that we know the answer to that. What I think we do know, which is clear, is that Donald Trump is the most dangerous candidate in perhaps the history of this country. And it's not only because of his terrible positions on all of the issues that I'm sure your listeners and viewers are familiar with. It is He is an authoritarian personality and will move this country in an authoritarian direction, the likes of which, I think it's hard to appreciate. So he's extremely dangerous. And I think what that reality has done is brought a whole lot of people to say, hey, you know what? We got to defeat this guy. We have to elect Kamala and Tim to the administration, and we go from there.
Are progressives and liberals, in your opinion, because of this existential threat, finally learning how to work together? Because things were
that's
different.
it's a complicated question. I think what you have is
It's
the idea
complicated.
of coalition politics is something that we're not familiar with in the United States. It exists in Europe all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
It did recently in France, as you may be familiar with.
Right.
There was a threat of a right-wing movement, Le Pen, similar to.
Yeah, France has a bunch of parties. They all got together and made some shit happen. In the United States, it really is just a two-party system. The Green Party barely exists. I mean, of course, the Libertarians aren't part of the left coalition, or like a theoretical left coalition. DSA, but I mean, come on. How many candidates do they have in office? But you look in places like Canada, the United Kingdom, France, they have actual other third parties. Third, fourth, and fifth, sixth parties. And we do not. We need help. Democratically.
And the left, including moderates and center left and further left people, came together and said, we can't allow this to happen in France. So right now we are united in an honest way to defeat Donald Trump. But do not minimize the differences that exist between progressives and corporate Democrats.
Immediately,
In your speech
if
at the
not
convention,
sooner.
you said that you wanted a ceasefire in Gaza.
We must end this horrific war in Gaza, bring home the hostages, and demand an immediate ceasefire.
Huge applause break moment in the United Center. It was pretty amazing. Everyone cheered. It really was a moment. But I want to talk about that word ceasefire. It means something very different for different people. The meaning of that word seems to be changing in real time. Senator Sanders, what is your definition of the word ceasefire?
If you allow me, back it up a little.
Aw, hey, thanks for that. A lot. AC shouted me out in Feldo's stream with a super chat while he has 3,000 people watching. He always has a ton of people watching. Way more than the Galactic News Network. Everybody go bomb Feldo's chat with the Galactic... No, I'm kidding. Don't do that. I'm sure that will cause more problems than it solves. Hold on. Let me go back. I was too busy reading that lovely chat.
It means something very different for different people. The meaning of that word seems to be changing in real time. Senator Sanders, what is your definition of the word ceasefire?
If you allow me, let me back it up a little bit,
Sure,
and I'll
please.
get there. Okay.
And it's just walking us through.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go through with what happened. On October 7th, Hamas, which is a terrorist organization,
Oh my god.
invaded Israel and killed 1,200 innocent men, women, and children.
This is where things go a little bit off the rails for me in this. The first 5 minutes, great. And then he starts doing a historical on October 7th that all of us have heard 10,076 times.
Took 200 hostages. They are a terrorist organization. Bad news, guys. Israel responded as any government would respond to an attack like that. Israel had the right to defend itself. But what has happened since then is, rather than just go after Hamas, a terrorist organization, what Israel, under an extreme right-wing government led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who has in his cabinet people to the right of him who are out and out anti-Palestinian racist. No ifs, buts, and matter. These are racist. So this is the cabinet. What they have done is say, hey, we're not just going to go after Hamas. We're going to go after the Palestinian people. Mm-hmm. And the carnage has been horrific. And we are looking at the worst humanitarian disaster, one of the worst in modern history. And I've been on the floor talking about this a whole lot. So it's not just 30,000, they got a population there in Gaza, 2.2 million, 30.
I feel like he's underestimating a bunch of stuff as he goes here, but at least he's going through the whole thing. You don't want to put Bob in a difficult position, but maybe after the stream is done, he'll shout us up. Maybe he would. That'd be super sweet. Fingers crossed. I don't know if Bob's listening right now, but that would be dope if you know. I know that he mods over there at the Feldo stream. Somehow Republicans are shouting about how they'll execute women who get abortions and gays busted by vice squads and all trans people, and somehow it's got no media airtime whatsoever. Doesn't the Galactic News Network count as anything? I feel like we talk about this. I feel like we talk about the insanity.
Okay. Mostly women, children, and the elderly. Over 80,000 injured, mostly women, children, and the elderly.
Yes.
You got 1.8 million people. 3/4 of the population displaced. You got it? Taken out of your home.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you moved again, and then you moved again. And it's a young population, a lot of children. Okay? You got 65% of the housing damaged or destroyed. Got that?
Right.
So we don't know where these people are going to go back to.
Here's the thing.
There are 12 universities.
This is like I was saying. At that 5-minute mark, things kind of start going off the rails when they're talking about Gaza here. And you know, it feels like he's overcompensating in this part for some reason. I think it's partly because of the way he started it off. I think he knows it's not a super great recounting of everything, and you know, I just feel, you know, he's sort of like yelling at like, oh, you like, don't you know this? And it's like, yeah, Hasan's the one who asked the question about all this, and you're kind of telling it from this weird sort of almost confrontational, sort of oppositional side, where I don't think that's really what he was saying. I've got 25 viewers versus 250 million, like major news. They don't get 250 million. They do get a lot, though. They get more than us.
In Gaza, guess what? Every single one of them has been bombed. They had a fairly decent healthcare system, systematically destroyed. Very few functioning hospitals right now. You got no.
Honestly, though, I feel like YouTube channels do better. Like YouTube, like political streamers, at least some, like the big ones, like do better than like the major news networks sometimes for certain things. Right? You know, like if you looked at some of the views out there on both sides, whether it's like the majority reporter like Megyn Kelly on the Republican side during debates or whatever else, I mean they're certainly at least competing very strongly with the fake news media.
Illegal.
Electricity in Gaza right now. And then as a result of Israel's efforts to deny humanitarian aid, to block humanitarian aid, you're now looking at the possibility of mass starvation, and children right now are malnourished. And when you're a child malnourished, that's permanent. I mean, you may not necessarily die. It'll impact your intellectual development and emotional development. So you got a horror show. Now, what bothers me, I would hope that bothers anybody.
Of course.
But what is even worse is a lot of this is being done with U.S. taxpayer dollars. So what I have insisted on from day one, and one of the few, is to say, you know what? Not another nickel to Netanyahu's extremist government to continue the war against the Palestinian people.
Our new position must be simple and straightforward. Not another nickel for the Netanyahu government if their present policies continue.
As we speak, there's more military aid going to Netanyahu, and I'm going to do my best to block it. Do I think we'll win? No. But there is a provision that you have to block that kind of military aid, and I will do my best to block it.
As I read and internalize the news, they're giving me these updates on the negotiations, and it feels almost like the iTunes user agreement, where it's, we all want a ceasefire, but ceasefire if, ceasefire but. Help me understand that.
Well,
Is
I
it
can.
conditional or
I
unconditional?
mean, look, you're asking a very fair question.
Okay.
And it's just not, I have not been involved day-to-day ceasefires. So it's a good question. Don't know the answer. All that I do know.
Can you help me frame this?
Well, sure. I mean, look, if you're Hamas, right? What do you want? If you want a ceasefire, which I suspect they may want it, you want to protect your interests as best as you can.
They
If
said
you're
they
Israel,
do.
You want to minimize or diminish Hamas to the degree you can. So
Hamas has said multiple times that they want a ceasefire. They've agreed to multiple ceasefire agreements that Israel turned down. We know this. We know this to be a fact, Chad.
as best you can. If you're Israel, you want to minimize or diminish Hamas to the degree you can. So I suspect within that framework, that's what these discussions are about.
Do you feel the U.S. has a role as a neutral broker between these two sides?
U.S. is not a neutral broker. U.S. is significantly supporting the Netanyahu government.
Okay.
Not neutral, but I think, and what we focus,
Yeah, we have been.
rightfully so, on Gaza. But I hope everybody understands there's another part. There's the West Bank, where you're seeing unprecedented vigilantism against Palestinian landowners and homeowners.
It's not just
So, look, the
vigilantism.
role that the United States
We just got done watching the West Bank being attacked by the IDF. They weren't vigilantes. They were troops on tanks. And this interview was done yesterday. So I feel like, and the West Bank attack has been going on for 2 days, and the fact is, for months, it hasn't just been vigilantism. It's not just yesterday or that it started, right? We've seen numerous attacks, missile and rocket attacks on the West Bank by the IDF. So yeah, no, it's not just the settlers. I mean, sure, the settlers are causing problems, obviously. Violence. They're taking property, they're killing people. But it's not just them.
play is Israel has been dependent on U.S. financial support and military support for a long time. And what we have got to say to them, if you want another nickel, sorry, this is the way it's going to be. At the very least, there's going to be a Palestinian state. Palestinian people need their own political and economic entity. And we are not going to be providing you any more weapons so long as you are going to war against the Palestinian people.
You're obviously in the Senate. Let's talk about the House. Back in April, there was a bill to approve billions in military aid for Israel that went through Congress. Out of the roughly 200 House Democrats, only 37 voted against military aid. So just so folks understand kind of the way the voting works, over 80% of House Democrats
And
were
virtually
good.
all Republicans, I would imagine.
Correct?
Yeah.
We're good on sending
Yeah.
aid. Okay. Yesterday, I was at the United Center. You say the word ceasefire, incredible applause break. So what I'm hearing at the convention is from the Democratic Party is yay ceasefire.
Yep.
And simultaneously from 80% of those members of Congress, I'm also hearing
Yep.
yay weapons.
The
Exactly
convention
right.
is, thousands of people. It's a small number of people.
Right.
If you do polling today, I think if you ask a simple question and you say, do you think your taxpayer, American taxpayer dollars, should go to support the Netanyahu government and the continuation of the war? I suspect a pretty strong majority of Americans would say, no, I don't. And among Democrats, the numbers would be very high. So if your question is Congress, I think your question is, reflecting where the American people are at?
Correct.
The answer is no, they're not.
Yeah,
Why is
exactly.
Well, it is the same answer that I would give you if you asked me, gee, how come every other major country on earth has health care as a human right and we don't? And polls show that the majority of the American people want health care as a human right. How come we don't tax billionaires at a higher rate when the American people think we should? And the answer to all of those questions is the same. And I tried to talk about that a little bit last night. It is the role of money in politics. So right now, both major political parties, Democrats and Republicans, are funded very heavily by the wealthiest people in this country. And if you were a billionaire and you wanted to start a super PAC, you could put hundreds of millions of dollars into campaigns to defeat people who opposed you and to support your friends who will support your agenda.
2 out of those 37 House members that voted against the weapons bill were Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush.
That's right.
They recently lost their primaries. Why
Yep.
did they lose their primaries?
Well, that's good. And they lost their primaries because a super PAC, AIPAC, put an unprecedented amount of money. I was involved in both of their campaigns, Jamal's more than Corey's, but we helped Corey raise money. And the reason is the billionaire class does not want strong opposition to the billionaire agenda. And in Jamal, you had somebody who was strongly opposed to it. And it's not just on Israel, where his views were not probably dissimilar to mine or Corey's, but on other issues as well. So what you got, and let me repeat this because it's not talked about enough. Yeah, do we have a democracy? Yes, you can go out and vote. That's great. And please, everybody, go out and vote. But what most of you cannot do is put hundreds of millions of dollars into a super PAC.
Nope, can't
to
do it.
elect candidates you want or defeat candidates you don't like. So there's a super PAC out there. They went after Jamal in an unprecedented way, defeated him. Went after Corey, defeated her. And that is the power of money in politics. And that is why it is absolutely imperative that we get rid of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United and move to.
Yeah, and he's totally right about this. I mean, we need to get money out of politics. I mean, he's been saying it for a very long time, and couldn't be more true now than it has ever been, at least in modern history.
Funding of elections.
Right.
This is just money. Look, it is not complicated. If you are, this gentleman over here, probably not, you're a billionaire, and you didn't like Bernie Sanders, or you don't like Cory Bush, you don't like Jamal Bowman, you can start a super PAC, Friends of America, call it whatever you want. You could take out a check, put $500 million into that check, get a few of your friends to contribute, and you go after them, put ads on TV. That's legal. That's what Citizens United allows us to do. Nothing conspiratorial about it. That is the reality of American politics. That's going on in both political parties. Check out the amount of money.
Yeah, and I've said this multiple times on the stream that we need to revisit and get rid of Citizens United. It has absolutely destroyed our democracy.
Billionaires are now contributing both to the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And that will answer your question, I think, not only about the war in Gaza, it's why we don't have healthcare as a human right, why we have massive income and wealth inequality, why we have a corrupt tax system, why we are not able to send our kids to college and make it affordable, et cetera, et cetera. It's money. Money talks.
I want to talk about your career in politics. You have been propping open the Overton window for the past 40 years. And 8 years ago, a bunch of my friends were just hunched over a laptop on Reddit, vaping, on their phones, just going, you know what? This guy makes a lot of sense. Does it ever get exhausting seeing how slow it takes for the electorate to eventually catch up to ideas that feel so basic?
They feel basic, but there's an idea that I think people don't comprehend, is that the people on top have enormous power. Just think, I'm a little bit older than you. Okay. So when I was a kid, people of your color couldn't drink at a water fountain in Mississippi. Okay, go to segregated schools, etc. It took God knows how long for people to stand up and fight against segregation and racism. It took a very long time. People died in the struggle. Okay. And sheriffs going out there and they shot people and they lynched people. There's a movie on Emmett Till and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's photos of you marching in the Civil Rights Movement. Yeah.
My point is, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but in the real world, when you take on people with power, they don't fold up and they don't say, Hasan, you made a good point. Hey, we're going to provide health care to all people. Geez, why didn't I think of that? This poor guy. Doesn't work.
I don't want reality.
These people have power and they have money and they're extremely greedy.
You're telling me a witty, top pinned comment can't take down the billionaire class?
Well, it takes, you have to think that one through. Taking down the billionaire class ain't easy. They own the media, all right? They have enormous power in both political parties. They are very, very powerful people. So that you don't win and change the world overnight, well, I'm sorry, that's the bad news. It doesn't happen. It didn't happen in the civil rights movement. Women I mean, I can remember, it wasn't so many years ago. This is true. I mean, this is how quickly your generation may not know this. But not so many, a few decades ago, in the United States Senate, 100 people, there were 2 women, 98 men, 2 women. The idea of somebody like Kamala Harris running for president, a woman, a black woman, people literally would have said to you, "You're absolutely crazy. That ain't never going to happen in 100 years.
Right.
All right. My point is, change happens. We have got to make that change happen faster. But anyone who thinks it happens overnight, it doesn't. You have friends, I suspect, who are gay, right? 30, 40 years ago, people didn't talk about being gay. Now you have a Secretary of Transportation who is gay. You've got governors who are gay.
Right.
All right, that didn't happen by accident. People fought and struggled.
Senator Sanders, unfortunately, this position has been framed in, I believe at times you've been framed in the media as this kind of radical person.
Good point.
But I want to talk about your Guardian article, because what you did is you conducted your own research and you showed that these progressive policies are actually super popular, 10 toes on the ground. This is not a Twitter position. This is not an Instagram stories position. Real IRL Americans care about these issues. How much of a gap do you think is there between your platform in 2020, these issues that we talk about that we feel are common sense, and the Harris-Walz platform of 2024?
Well, they don't have a platform yet. They're working on it. You know, in fairness, and it's an important point to make, she has been a candidate now for all of a month.
Right.
Can you imagine what fell on her shoulders? I mean, having to organize the campaign. She got a lot of folks from Biden's campaign, but, you know, to organize that, to plan out the rallies that you have to do, to plan out the convention that is now taking place, to select a vice presidential candidate, to work on policy stuff. I mean, that is a lot to do in a month, and I think she's been doing a very good job. What I will say, and I want to pick up on the point you made and amplify it.
About the Guardian article.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, what we did.
Please do, because I ran out of free articles, so I didn't get to read all of it and stopped halfway through.
What we did is we said, look, I'm called a far left guy, right? Trump has decided that Kamala Harris is a communist. I mean, totally insane. So we asked the American people a lot of simple questions about some of the major issues facing this country, Republicans, Democrats, Independents. So we said, do you think that the wealthy and large corporations should pay more in taxes? Shock of all shocks, over 70% of the American people said yes, including a majority of Republicans. Should we be surprised? No.
No.
All right.
Yeah, of course.
Question, should we raise Social Security benefits by lifting the cap on taxable income and extend life by 75 years? In other words, asking the wealthy to contribute more into Social Security. Over 70% of the people said yes. Should we raise the minimum wage to a living wage? American people overwhelmingly said yes. Should we expand Medicare? Right now, Medicare is a good program. It doesn't cover dental, hearing, and vision. Should we expand it? Over 70%. In all these instances, a majority of Republicans. So your question, I think, is, if the American people feel that way, why, A, haven't we done it? Why aren't people?
Yeah, why haven't they been implemented?
And the answer, the answer gets back to what I said a moment ago. It's money. The insurance companies don't like.
It is money. And the thing is, and some of these things he's talking about, we have been making incremental progress on. Like he's saying, it's not overnight. It requires people in the streets. It requires people organizing, informing themselves, and doing everything they can to make these things a reality. And, you know, hopefully if we continue to press on the things that we find to be the most important, those things that, you know, are often agreed upon by the entire, well, not the entire American people, but by the majority of the American people, maybe we'll actually eventually get them done. Fact is, I think a lot of us are impatient, and I don't blame us because of just how fucked everything is. And do we have time to play you know, incrementalism over how much time do we have to do such a thing? Especially when we talk about things like environmental policies. But we have to do whatever we can, you know, and hopefully at least talking about this here on the stream is helping in some sort of tiny way. I don't know.
idea. The rich don't like the idea of paying more in taxes. The insurance companies don't like the idea of expanding Medicare.
Is there a realistic path for my generation to remove money from politics? Is this something?
Goddamn right there is.
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm
I mean, what
38.
you got to do.
Hopefully I have a long way to go.
All right. The answer is, of course, there is. This money has always played a role in politics, but it was greatly accentuated by this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. So we need legislation to get rid of Citizens United and to move to public funding of elections. If you do that, there will no more be super PACs. Billionaires will not be able to play the role they're playing right now. And again, not a radical idea. Mm-hmm. This exists in many other countries around the world.
I hope we do change it, and I hope we do move money from politics, because we still don't have Medicare for all. Minimum wage is still at $7.15, which is crazy. When I worked at Safeway in 2003 in Davis, California,
still the same.
I think I was $7.25.
Yep.
And we are still paying other countries to bomb civilians.
Yep.
I want to ask you about your legacy and what you represent in American politics. Do you ever feel like you failed because these things haven't happened? No. Or do you feel like a success because these things are now part of the regular conversation?
Well, I'm sure you're familiar with people like Pramila Jayapal and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Maxwell Forst and many others. Look, what is, again, an untold story in the Congress right now, and I just saw Pramila this morning, actually, is there are almost 100 members of the Progressive Caucus, and a significant number of them are young, often women, people of color. That's a revolution. Never, ever, ever have you had more progressives who are fighting to transform this country in profound ways. Never before have there been that many in the House of Representatives. That isn't true in the Senate. We don't have that in the Senate. But in the House, that exists. And I'm proud that my two campaigns have gotten a lot of people to say, you know what, I think I can run. What Bernie is saying makes sense to me. That's an agenda that I like. I think I'm going to run for office. Not only for
And how powerful is that?
Oh, my goodness.
How much can Congress change the fate of the country and the way money is moved through the country?
They can pass legislation which gets money out of politics. That's what I'm saying. You can pass legislation. Super PACs are not biblical. They're not inherent. You can get rid of them tomorrow if you had the legislation to do it, and that's what we've got to do.
I have so many friends that were Bernie or bust. And when you didn't win in 2016 or 2020, they bust. They checked out of politics, and then they hard pivoted into Bitcoins.
Wow, really?
Then they pivoted.
I fucking love that reaction from Bernie. Wow, really? Bitcoin, you say? Okay, chat. That's gonna do it for me.
Do you know what we're here for?
Equal parts. Oh my gosh.
Illegal.